morning. I'm Chief Bernadette Tapino with the Sarasota Police Department, and I am pleased to announce that charges have been brought against an individual for the shooting of the Sarasota County Fire Department paramedics ambulance that happened in January of this year. An individual by the name of Tyron Young, who's 32 years old, of 3011 Goodrich Avenue here in Sarasota, is facing multiple felony charges in connection with that shooting. We're especially pleased because it brings some closure to a case that is, against one of our fellow first responders, and one that we took very close to heart and near and dear to us because we work with our fellow firefighters and paramedics on a day-to-day basis. As in law enforcement, we expect that people oftentimes will shoot at us because we're police officers, but when you hear about paramedics being shot at and facing a similar thing, it's very disturbing to us and was very upsetting as a fellow first responder, because these are individuals that respond every single day to help people who are in need, that need medical attention, and to save people's lives. So this was very troubling. It's something that spanned across our entire state. I was getting calls from other chiefs, is this a trend? Are paramedics being targeted? Even people up north were calling to find out about this. So it's a very satisfying day for us to be able to bring closure to a case that we've been working diligently on since January. This is one of those types of cases that really good old-fashioned police work was involved, tracking down information based on a robo-type call that was received by the dispatch system that early morning at about 4 a.m. asking for help and to respond to an address for someone that had fallen. And as our paramedics do, they quickly get to the scene, and when they went to the address, they found that no one at that address had called and no one needed any help. And when they returned to their vehicle, an individual came out and shot several rounds at them, at least 2 striking the ambulance, and the paramedics were able to fortunately escape without being injured. Then called SPD, our officers, and eventually our detectives arrived at the scene, and I've got Detective Morningstar here, who was the lead investigator in this case, and I've got to commend our investigators. They worked so hard, and I'm so proud of him. I met with him this morning to congratulate him on doing such a good job, and he's actually here on his day off. He's so committed to making sure that the information gets out accurately to all of you. I also need to recognize a couple of other people, Detective McDowell, and also a pretty much new position that we, luckily our city commissioners and city manager approved for us to get a evidence tech who does analysis on phones and other technical pieces of equipment. So Brian Yang, I've got to give a special shout out to, because he helped us be able to track down and find who this individual was. The story of why he did it is quite interesting. He actually had come forward at one point in the investigation and said he was a witness to this shooting, and thought he knew and believed he knew who it was that actually did the shooting, and was willing to come forward and give state's evidence in exchange for a reduction in his current charges that he had against him, so he wouldn't have to spend as much time in jail. So Young is facing a series of charges, including 2 counts of aggravated assault on a firefighter, which is a felony, shooting into a vehicle, another felony, unlawful use of two-way communication device, another felony, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, another felony. It should be noted that Young is a 5-time convicted felon in the state of Florida. Never should have possessed or owned a firearm, yet he had one, was able to shoot at our brave and courageous paramedics, and also charged with the misuse of 911, which is a misdemeanor. So I have the fire chief here. He's going to introduce himself to you, and he wants just to make a few brief remarks.
Thank you. Right, I'm Mike Regner. I'm the fire chief of Sarasota County Fire Department, and I just have to tell you, to receive the phone call to say that this person is brought to justice is very, very relieving for all of our firefighters that are out there doing good work every single day. So it's very, very important that I mention how much we've had interaction with Sarasota Police Department during this time, over the last couple of months, to work through this and to understand what was happening and what was going on through this. Was it a larger issue? Was it a single situation, and to have the information from law enforcement to give our firefighters, and I can pass that along, was very comforting through this entire ordeal. And I just want to say once again, thank you so much to the Sarasota Police Department for keeping us informed, bringing a person to justice, and making sure that the firefighters that are out there doing good work every day are safe. So thank you very much.
At this point, I'll open it up to any questions. I do have Detective Morningstar. You have a copy of the probable cause affidavit that was submitted to a judge and signed last night. The individual was in jail at the time and was actually scheduled to face a hearing today to be sentenced. These additional charges were added on to his case, and we'll see how it progresses from there. I will add, this is an ongoing investigation. We have yet to recover the firearm or the cell phone in this case, and we're looking for anyone that may have any of these items or information that will help us to be able to obtain these items in this case. It will be instrumental. We're also still looking for additional witnesses or anyone that has any information about this case, and we ask you to contact Detective Morningstar. So we'll open it up to any questions you have.
Chief, how calculated was this crime, and do you think potentially he could have been trying to do this again?
Well, from the investigation, I believe it was calculated. There was a previous call, a similar call from this location. We believe it may have been a test run to see if it worked. The individual did some research and had a call made to the 911 center stating in a robo-type voice that they needed help from our paramedics. So that happened back in November, and then again, so we think it was calculated.
If he wasn't, charged for this other crime and he was still out there, do you think he would be trying to do this again?
You'd have to ask him that. I don't know. I couldn't even speculate to this, but I can tell you it's concerning to me because if a person is willing to do this once, they may be willing to do it again if they felt it would benefit them. So we're just glad to be able to bring justice to the two paramedics and the entire firefighter community who are fellow first responders, because it's got to be a relief from them. We were concerned, was this going to be a new trend where people are going to be attacking our first responders? Again, they're out there to save people's lives, and here people were trying to hurt them. Just doesn't make any sense to us. So while every single case that we receive in the Sarasota Police Department gets our full commitment, this one has a special place in our heart because it is our fellow firefighters. And we're just glad to be able to bring them a little bit of closure, allow them to sleep a little bit better at night, knowing that the individual responsible for this is behind bars and is going to get justice for such a horrible, horrendous case. Thank goodness no one was injured in this case.
And Chief, how disturbing is it that he was trying to give up his own nephew, his juvenile nephew, to bring this on him?
I just think it shows the character of the individual, that he was willing to do that in order to save himself. I'm glad that we were able to bring him to justice and bring these charges against him, and hopefully he'll get the justice he deserves and not be out on the street for a long time.
Maybe a question for Detective Morningstar. How soon did he present himself to you, and how eager did he seem to exchange this information for a reduced sentence?
It was early in the early stages of the investigation. Within hours, he was presenting himself as a witness. In his statements, he pointed the finger at his juvenile nephew. No evidence was found to corroborate that accusation. But in providing the information, he sort of told on himself by providing specific details about the case that no one else could have or should have known.
Perhaps a question more for the fire chief. What's been the mood like over these past couple of months? Has there been some anxiety, especially in going some rough areas of town?
There's anxiety throughout. If anytime you have something like this happen, we work very hard to have the support of the community, and to have something like this happen and not know what exactly is transpiring, who did this, why, what are all those reasons, is very difficult for the firefighters and paramedics that are out there. So there was a lot of questions. We put out a lot of information as much as we could during the investigation, at least to try and quell some of that concern. But anytime you're out responding, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you're responding to a call, and the house is dark and you're knocking on a door, you just don't know what you're going to run into. So those types of things are definitely in the backs of firefighters and paramedics, especially here, in their minds. And it was a lot of work during that month, the 2 months actually, to try and quell some of that, and this definitely brings closure, which is very relieving, like I said.
What changes in procedure have been made for just safety protocol when they go out on a call? Are police still backing them up? What is in play now?
Sure, so we have instituted a number of different changes within our policies and procedures. I won't go into detail on what those are just for the safety of the firefighters, but this was a robocall, which is something unique that we hadn't seen as often as we probably will in the future. So having that robocall type 911 call itself makes you kind of have to come up with new policies and new procedures to be aware of those types of things. So we looked at a number of policies to go through that to try and lessen, the issues that are always in front of us. But there's definitely a situational awareness that firefighters, law enforcement, and even anybody within the community has to have, no matter where you are or what you're doing. Situational awareness is paramount. You just understand that not everybody's a good person, and thank goodness we got this one on the street.
Will you be able to tell now when a call comes in that, you have to answer, in the past you said you had to answer every call that comes in, but will you be able to tell the difference if it's a fake one or not?
Unfortunately, if you call 911, and in my eyes as a first responder, and sure law enforcement as well, we're getting the call that somebody's in need of assistance. So we're going to respond. Now, how we do that, we have to look out for the safety of ourselves, of whoever's calling 911, and then the community at large. So policies have to be put in place. We're looking at them, like I said, have developed some things, and we just want everyone to know that we're still out there, we're still responding and doing the job that we need to do each and every day.
The only thing I'll add is that, firefighters and law enforcement, we have a sisterhood and brotherhood that's
Absolutely.
often, we tease each other, we're in competition with each other with the blood drive, and and that's that good-natured ribbing. But when it comes down to it, we work together side by side. Our commitment is we are going to do everything we can to keep our firefighters and our paramedics safe, because they're the ones that are keeping our community safe alongside of us. And that's why this case was so important for us to bring closure. And we're going to be committed to keeping them safe. And some of the protocols that you're asking about, we just can't talk about them, because as soon as we discuss a protocol, then somebody's trying to figure out how to overcome that protocol. So we're going to be committed to doing everything we can to protect them.
I know that you guys started going to more calls with the firefighter paramedics. Do you anticipate that continuing?
I do. And then, you know what, we have our police officers are out riding around in the community, and they might be closer to calls, and when we're not tied up on other calls, there's nothing wrong with us responding. Our officers are also trained in first aid and how to respond to some of the type of incidents, and if we can get there and again keep them safe to be able to help them do their job, we'll do as much as we can with the resources that we have.
Did he ever give a motive?
As I talked to you before, is that he's facing criminal charges, and he was going to try to use this, we believe, to reduce his charges by being a witness for the state and bringing forth information which he would hope get a reduction in sentence for his current charges.
So do you believe, did he mean just to shoot the vehicle, or did he potentially have a plan to actually shoot the paramedics?
You ask a lot of good questions that I guess we'll have to find out if he's willing to testify to that. So unfortunately, we can't get into their minds. All I can tell you is when somebody shoots at somebody, it's so easy, even if let's just say that it was accidental. The intent was there, and he was shooting at the vehicle, into the vehicle where there were people, and it by the grace of God, it luckily didn't penetrate and go into the paramedics. He was shooting at them in their direction. I don't believe he was just doing it to scare them. I believe he was trying to hurt them. Okay, thank you so much for this. I appreciate it, and be safe.